Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay.
Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. My name is host Mike Jokum. Jess, Matt, and special guest Josh Blackburn joined me this evening. Before we dive into everything, obviously this episode again brought to you by gripmat.com, the world's first flexible non-slip tool mat. Use promo code PLP10 on their website for 10% off. So with that being said, I will introduce Josh. Josh has this really crappy, but actually pretty good podcast called North 40 Report and worked for Andretti this year. So, Josh, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that or if we should just dive right into things.
We can just dive right into things.
Let's do it. First up is a fan question. Actually, probably Josh might have a good answer on this one here from Patreon member Mark Van Niekerk, using Alex Rossi as an example. When a team has, multiple cars, in this case, 4 cars for Andretti this year, does Andretti pull resources to help support Alex Rossi when he's fighting for a championship?
Well, can you say that question again? I want to make sure I got it right.
So in a championship battle, will Michael Andretti and co. pull resources to help Rossi, whether it be engineering or crew guys or what have you, to help Rossi fight for a championship?
Well, if you want me to answer first, I'll go ahead and do that. And what I noticed was obviously a lot of the head focus was on Rossi, of course, but it kind of was like a business as usual is what it felt like. And also, like the last race, we had Connor Daly, so technically we could kind of spread ourselves even more, and which some of us we didn't really understand. I mean, we kind of understood why we're doing it, but we didn't. It was like, this is a bad time to be putting a 5th car out here because it just seemed to be stretching things a little bit. But engineering wise and mechanic wise, it was just it was pretty much business as usual.
And Jess and Matt, any thoughts or opinions on the topic? Should a team maybe pull some more resources to help a Alex Rossi or somebody contending for the championship?
I mean, I guess in the case of Andretti Autosport, it would probably make sense to. I mean, they have so many resources and anything to really help win the championship in a, we'll say, morally correct way. And so I think putting different crew guys on his team and whatnot is definitely one of the ways to do it versus having, one of his teammates go out there and cause a deliberate yellow to get him to the front. So I think in that sense, I don't see anything wrong with it. And if they do intend to do that, then I think more power to them.
I don't necessarily see anything wrong with it per se, but I kind of see the other side of what you just said, bringing people over to kind of fill out the team or whatever might actually be negative because the team has, been cohesive all season and they have their positions down and know what to do, when, and where they're going to be. And so bringing somebody into the mix late in the season might actually be, kind of a downfall.
Yeah, I think all good points there. And I think I would agree with Jess. So we will continue on.
And I'll also put another thing on there too is, all right, the engineers, I'm already forgetting his name, but the engineers on Rossi's car, they're the best on the team anyway. So it really isn't going to add. This is going to bother me not remembering the head engineer for that. what was
Jeremy
that again?
Millis?
Jeremy Miles. Yeah. He, he's one of the best engineers I've ever been around anyway. So like we did a full 2 or 3 days on a shaker rig before going out there. And like I say, engineering wise, you're not going to get too much more help if you're bringing over the guys that are on Zach Veach's car, to figure stuff out. So I don't know if that adds anything to it, but it's the best in the business with that car already. So it's almost like too many cooks in the kitchen. It kind of seemed like if you were to add anything else. So
I like it. Well, we will continue on with the next point here. I'll turn it over to Matt.
Yeah, and Josh, just real quick, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time tonight. It's really nice having you on.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys bringing me on. I would like to defend my podcast for a second, since you guys already called it super horrible. But yeah, we haven't recorded an episode per se since the season. I get a little busy, but we should be recording sometime here in the next few weeks. And you guys do a really good job of straight news and kind of like reviewing facts and like reviewing the season. And what I try and do is more of like interviewing people that are in the business and telling them their specific stories. Because when I was growing up, like going to IUPUI, I live here in Indianapolis. When I was at IUPUI going to college, all I knew how to get into the sport was either a mechanic or an engineer. You guys probably know this too. You guys have probably seen so many different sides of the business and, different ways of being in racing without actually having to be like a mechanic or doing something on the team, that I wish I knew that stuff going in, to where like, I'm not a smart engineer. I don't know how to do this. So it would have been great to like hear someone's story and say, hey, you don't have to be an engineer to be in IndyCar, or you don't actually have to be on an IndyCar team to be in the sport. You can work in marketing and be in that stuff. So that's kind of like what we try and do. A little bit of an offshoot from like, just straight up news and stuff. There's already enough. You guys do that. Marshall Pruitt does all that stuff too. And we just kind of do a little bit different stuff. So, but you guys are pretty good with what you do. I mean, I don't fall asleep too quickly. So.
Yeah, and as far as Mike's comments on the podcast, sometimes he doesn't speak for Jess and I all the time. So I think that maybe was just
he's a big jerk.
Can we get that on a t-shirt? Is that a thing? Mike's a big jerk.
I'll work on that tomorrow.
All right. Anyways, one of the main discussion points that we wanted to get to, and this kind of hits into kind of Josh's employer with Andretti Autosport, is some comments that Trevor Carlin came out with this weekend. And this was in an article with David Malsher of Motorsport. And in essence, I'll kind of paraphrase everything for you guys, is that Carlin basically came out and warned Jay Fry, apparently at Laguna Seca, that the big team's expanding. And to recap, Ganassi's moving to 3, possibly 4 cars. Andretti Autosport's expanding. There's the possibility of Rahal Letterman adding a new team, a new entry. I know they're not one of the big 3. But with these big teams expanding, Carlin's arguing that the smaller teams will have harder times getting good results, attracting sponsors, and basically be a hindrance to these smaller teams. So we'll start out with our guest of honor, Josh. What are your overall thoughts about what Trevor Carlin had to say?
First of all, can I get that on a t-shirt? Guest of honor, Josh. No, I was actually, when I was going through your guys' rundown of what you were going through, I actually hadn't heard those comments yet, and it was, that was interesting. Personally, I think there's a lot of truth to that, but what are you going to do about it? If Andretti, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources, and the Colton Herta Harding car was basically an Andretti car all year long, and now it's basically just moving into the shop that they were running out of. I understand why it's a problem for the small teams, because the shock problem or the shock programs are pretty much the only thing that separate the teams right now, which is a little bit disappointing since it's like just one major thing that you're spending six figures on a year. But like, how are you gonna tell Andretti or Penske or Ganassi, no, you can't have more than two or three cars? Where are those teams gonna come from? Because it's so much easier to like just add a car to Andretti versus, okay, there's another like Juncos, have another a team like Juncos come up. Then you have to build a whole new shop. You have to buy the new trucks. You have to buy. There's so much resources that you need just to get started, and that's even before figuring out what kind of shock program you're going to do. And if you don't have any type of updated shock program other than like the basic stuff you get, you're going to be like 2 or 3 seconds off the pace. So it's like a catch-22. I understand what Carlin's coming from, but the series has got to grow, and it's got to grow somehow. And at some point, if you get like 6 or 7 cars in Andretti, he's going to farm 2 or 3 of those out and be like, hey, you can be like our B team or whatever. And just kind of like what Ganassi did with Ray Hall. And remember when he had he had the 2 Target cars, and then he had Ray Hall and I think it was Jay Howard or something was the farm team. Oh, it was a Charlie Kimball. Charlie Kimball and Ray Hall were like the little farm team for him. So, I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, with everything being so expensive nowadays, it makes sense that you can't tell a team not to expand because where's that car going to come from?
Yeah, you raise a lot of very good points there, and I read the article, and my gut says, well, if you want to beat the best teams, work harder and become one of the best teams, and Carlin definitely has a good track record throughout Europe in the F2s and F3s and whatnot, and I think it's I think they expected to be better quicker than they are, and they're trying to maybe cover their butts a little bit, but I don't completely agree with it. I don't think bigger teams are necessarily bad for IndyCar, and I don't think it's going to hold back a new team from joining either. If a new team wants to join IndyCar, as we've seen in the last handful of years, in the case even Dragon Speed upping their total races next year, they're going to join IndyCar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I just think that I understand where he's coming from, but I don't think he's really thinking it through all the way either. He's just kind of shooting from the hip, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't agree with his comments. I think, especially as someone pointed out on social media, with some of the European ladders that he's in, where he has several more entries than other teams, so it kind of comes off as a little hypocritical. But I think, yeah,
which is a good point you bring up, because he's probably spending more on F2 team, like probably double on F2 teams than he is IndyCar teams.
Right. But, so I think it's a little hypocritical, and I get where he's coming from, and I get that he's got an uphill battle in IndyCar. But I think if he just sticks it out and continues to hire the right personnel, I think they'll eventually make it as long as the finances add up. And then kind of something that Josh kind of touched on was with the car counts and Carlin going to Jay Fry. We can start with Jess on this one. Is it IndyCar or Jay Fry's job to limit teams' growth in IndyCar?
I don't think so. That would basically be turning them into F1 almost. I think that they just let it be and let the teams kind of work it out themselves. And frankly, like you guys have already brought up, where would these cars be coming from if it weren't for them? So I definitely don't want to see it happen for sure.
Yeah, I'm with Jess. I think, Jay Fry has to maybe manage expectations for new teams and say, hey, you're not going to go running up front right away. Harding Steinbrenner, as Josh mentioned, was essentially an Andretti car. So it's kind of a special, I don't know, exception to what I just said. But is it their job to limit bigger teams from growing? No. If the bigger teams are successful and they've got the money, they're allowed to spend that money.
Can you imagine like the fan outcry if someone had a full budget, but a team said, sorry, we're the league is mandated each team can have no more than 4 cars. So sorry. And like a quality driver, I'll just throw a name out. Pat O'Ward came back here with full funding, and Jay Fry had put a rule up that no team could, like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever to limit growth on a series that needs growth. So it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, I understand the argument about, hey, we're a small team, we're not going to get anything, but that you got to work for it too. So
fair point all around.
Yeah, I think do you guys got anything to add to that before we move on to the next one?
Nope.
All right. So then our next one is going to be another fan question. It's going to be coming from our Patreon member, Matt Grunholz. Now, this one was kind of targeted at me, so I'm going to answer it first.
Let's hear it.
If you could bulldoze one track and rebuild it, which one would you do and why? And the second part of that question, which I say is why it was targeted at me, is because it originally said something along the lines of, would it be Milwaukee? So yes, Matt, it would be Milwaukee because it's just terrible. I hate it. So I want to start over, and I would keep it an oval for sure, but I would add a lot more to it. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be able to be in the same location because the fairgrounds is just in the way, and I don't want to knock their fairgrounds down too. But I would figure out a way to redo that track.
I would bulldoze Phoenix back to its original configuration when IndyCar first came there, when the racing was pretty solid. As we saw, it wasn't really that great in the couple year return. So I'll go with Phoenix.
Mike, you can.
Go ahead, Josh.
You guys go. You guys can go ahead. I need to think a little bit more about this one.
Well, my serious answer would be Texas for the same reason that Mike said. I think turn 1 and turn 2 is just doesn't really work for me anymore. I think it's made the track worse for sure. My non-serious one would be NOLA, just so that they can go back and redo the drainage system that they've so messed up with the one race they held in 2015. What a disaster. It's like literally one of the worst races I've ever seen. So that would be my joking answer.
Well, and that is just a club track. So I mean, I was actually surprised that they even went there to begin with, just because there really isn't very much infrastructure around there. But I mean, the track layout there wasn't too bad. But yeah, if it started raining and everything just puddled on the track, it's not very good.
It rains in Louisiana?
Nah, never.
If you don't have one, you can just say Milwaukee too. Milwaukee is just kind of a good default answer.
I really don't like Phoenix or Milwaukee, so I think those are both good answers. I wouldn't change. I don't know. I would make them both more like bigger ovals, or make Milwaukee have it a little bit more banking to it, because I don't know. I just, man, I really hate the fact that they've moved all their. Do you guys realize that Indy is going to be like the only like super speedway that these guys run at for the next probably 5 to 10 years? Like, we should be at Michigan. They should be at stuff like Kentucky, like no brainer. Chicago, Michigan, Kentucky. They should be racing at those, but it is everything happening at Pocono. Now everyone's going to be scared about. And yes, everyone wants them to be safe. I don't want to argue against that. But man, these cars were made to go at Indy, not, flat 1 mile tracks, in my opinion. Like these are made to go 200 miles an hour. Let's not wave our hands and be afraid every time they hit 200 miles an hour. But I understand why the next couple of years they do it. But yeah, I would bulldoze Milwaukee, make that a little bit higher banking. Can you imagine a bull ring, basically turning Milwaukee into like a high bank bull ring and have the Indy cars go at it?
Okay, that would be fun.
That'd be kind of cool.
Can we?
Yeah.
Can we clip this whole segment and send it to Robin Miller?
Ooh. Yeah. Almost like if Milwaukee was like a Dover, but not concrete. I think that'd be kind of cool.
I dig it.
Yeah.
I'll get to some Patreon shout outs here before Jess tries to stump us all. Let's see.
We have people that pay to listen.
I know
to this?
people are insane.
That was me.
I know.
Guys.
Thank you to everybody who listens. Jake Neely, Jason Camps, and let's go to the bottom of the list here. Thank you, Stephen A. Clark. All right, Jess, stump us.
Okay, guys, I'm going kind of easy on you just because I was feeling nice. But for those of you who don't know, we have a Pit Lane Parlay Fantasy Football League. So this is going to be football and racing related.
How did you do last week?
Yeah, shut up.
She lost to me.
Yeah, well, I'm still leading the division, so whatevs.
You're in the weak division. It's okay.
I think that was also a shot at me. So
I was gonna say, is that the one Mike said?
Yeah. Okay, moving on. So we have our hero here, and that is Jay Fry, and Jay Fry we trust. And I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but he played football in college. And that was for the University of Missouri. He played 2 different positions. Do you guys know what positions he played?
Tight end.
Damn.
Okay, that's one.
Jesus, how the hell do you guys know that?
He tweets about it a lot.
Oh.
I'm going to say, because I don't think they would have him play 2 offensive positions.
End.
So I will say outside linebacker.
What did you say, Mike?
Defensive end.
Negative. So.
Okay, hold on. Oh, hey, wait, hold on a second.
Sorry, we're just not giving Josh a chance.
Typical.
Yeah. You got to give your guest of honor a chance. So he played tight end on offense, is what you guys said, right?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, he's got to be a linebacker or something. If he's that tight end, I'll say middle linebacker.
Negative. Ooh, am I really going to stump you on an easy one, guys?
Quarterback.
It's not easy.
Nope.
Jay Fry as quarterback. I mean, God bless him, but I don't see that happening.
He's strong safety.
Nope.
Right tackle.
Nope.
Oh,
Well, maybe it could have been right, I guess.
Oh, was he left
he
tackle?
was an offensive tackle. It doesn't say right or left.
Oh, there we go. That's a winner for me.
We'll take it. Close enough.
We love Jay Fry. And you know what? I take that back. Jay Fry could be an excellent quarterback of any football team.
Go ahead, Matt.
All right. We got another fan question here. This is from our buddy George. Appreciate you, George, as always. He wants to know kind of from our point of view, and this doesn't necessarily, because the question is phrased as a media member, but either just as a fan, crew person. I know Josh works for Andretti Autosport, or for us in the media. What is the most physically exhausting track from your point of view?
I'll let Josh go first on this one.
Well, to drive out to, because my main job is a truck driver. To drive out, obviously, is Laguna, because that's like 30 hours of driving. But I don't want to say exhausting, but Mid-Ohio, and actually it was better this year, but I don't think they had updated like their bathrooms or anything since 1965 or something. And I hated being there. I hated it. But I think they did a little bit of updating this year. But that would be my answer, because like their bathrooms and everything was always like holes in the ground. It was awful.
I'm going to go with Circuit of the Americas, walking from the media center out to the fan zone where the autograph session / live show is. We underestimated how long it would take to walk. And it would be me, Mike Knapp, and my lovely wife who joined us for the weekend. It was a 25-minute walk because there's not really too many places there that you can kind of, cross the track. There's only like one or two places, and they're not really ideal locations. So that was one where every day I got home and I was falling asleep eating dinner. So it was, that was pretty rough, but beautiful place.
I will go next, and I am going to say Indianapolis. And even if we don't do the whole month, because I work a normal job and I also do all of this stuff. So it's basically like working 2 full-time jobs. I am going to say just race day. I wake up at, what did we get up? Like 3 a.m., Mike?
Oh, man.
It was like 3 a.m. and we got home at like
8 p.m. roughly.
I was going to say it was 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it's just a very long day. And then you add in the emotions that it's Indianapolis and everything that goes with it. And it's just very tiring.
I'll echo what Jess said with Indianapolis. And just from a fan point of view, I mean, every time my parents and I go, we stay in a hotel. I never sleep well in hotels. Then we get up at 5:30 a.m. to beat traffic. And then by the time we sit down for the race, we're melting into our seat because it's always ungodly hot every time we go. And, all 300,000 other people around us are sweating and hot. And then we go home after the race and drive, whatever it is, 10 hours back to Minnesota. And it's just, it's so much fun. I would never miss it for the world if things worked out. Obviously, I'd try to go every year, but it is quite an exhausting trip all day, and then just getting back to Minnesota as well.
Fair point. All right, so it's time for our secret host question here. Since we didn't do a typical Jess Joker lap, my question is not.
It's a super duper secret host question.
Sorry. It's not super duper secret serious, but it is a little bit of fun, but some serious notes, kind of some silly season mixed in with this here. So which of these 3 things is most likely in 2020? Dragon Speed Racing having visa issues again, Dreyer and Reinbold running more than Indianapolis, or a rookie winning a race in 2020?
I mean,
now,
I'll go ahead and say... go ahead, Josh.
Can I ask real quick, what exactly were the visa problems with Dragon Speed? Like, what happened with that? Because that sounds like a funny story.
It seems like a Jess answer.
Yeah, go ahead,
here.
Jess.
Oh, how many times? So Dragon Speed was supposed to run more races this year. However, they failed to get visas taken care of, in advance. So they could never get back in the United States to come and run said races.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that is a problem. And I will say that is a problem actually with every team going into Canada, because any truck driver has any type of record or anything on their report, like a DUI or something, they're not going to be able to get across the border. And there's always like one truckie that gets stuck at the border, and someone has to call in like some like Indy Lights crew guy to come get the truck and help them out. But yeah, that's a common problem actually. So.
All right, so I'm ready for these answers.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say that my answer would be the Dragon Speed visa issues, because Ryan Reinbold says every year that they're going to do one more than Indy, and they never do. And I think the only two rookies next year will be Askew and VK, unless I'm missing something for full-time entries. So I don't see either of them two winning a race. So I'll stick with the visa issues.
Oh, man. I mean, like, I really don't want to agree with you, but yeah, I can wholeheartedly see that happening again, just because it seems like there was obviously some unpreparedness this year. And I feel like, let's say somebody on their team decides to quit mid-season, and so they need to bring somebody else over. Well, obviously they don't have a visa for that person in advance. So I could see it bite them again.
All right, Josh, it's all up to you.
They haven't announced who, like where some of these, like Oliver Askew and these guys are going to be going,
correct,
right? I don't think they.
Yep.
But man, I would like to say that, just because, man, did any of you think Fantino Ferrucci would be anywhere close to winning a race this past year? And there's a couple times he was in the top 5. And I really just don't want to agree with you guys, because I don't want to. So
that's what we do here. So you fit in just fine.
I'm just gonna say one of those rookies is gonna win. I'll put myself out there.
I like it. And to round it out, I will go. Well, I'm not going to agree with any of you guys, so I will go that Ryan Reinbold is finally going to run more than Indy this year. So we shall see, and it is time.
Which I would love to see. I would love to see.
That would be great.
Like I said, I don't mean to keep interrupting or anything, but this year was like the first year for them. Like when they're trying to Reinbold, whenever I hit the 500, they've always, like with Sage and Hildebrand, they've always been really good. But this was like the first year that they seemed like they were out to lunch. I mean, I don't know if that was just me, but Sage had to qualify the last day, and then he was nothing during the race. Hildebrand, he qualified fine, but he wasn't anywhere in there. Those guys are usually in the top 10, top 15 most of the month, and they just, I don't know what happened with him this year. I was disappointed to see that as a fan.
Yeah. Karam had a rough month. I think he'd be the first one to admit it. And looking here, Hildebrand finished. He started 21st, finished 20th. So it's pretty much a blah sort of day from him as well. So yes, I would like to see it as well. Obviously that would get the car count up even more. Mr. Trevor Carlin.
And they're an old school IRL team. I mean, I always root for the old school IRL guys. So.
Very well said. So we will round out today's episode with the pitfalls. Josh, if you'd like to add one in, feel free, or you can just give some opinions on everybody else's. Pitfalls, as always, sponsored by our friends at Craft 1861. You go to craft1861.com. You can get any sort of CBD product you want. Promo code PLP40 will get you 40% off. So I'm going to start it out here because I found this about 15 minutes before we started recording. I'm going to pick on my pals at Williams Racing again. Last week, I think this article came out almost 2 weeks ago now, that Robert Kubica was surprised that they didn't have more issues with their lack of spare parts 20 races or 18 races into the season. They claimed back in March that they had a lack of spare parts. So 6 months later, they still don't have any spare parts. So if you get into an accident, you have some wing damage, you just have to retire the car. I mean, this team is being horribly mismanaged all year. And this is just another example of that. I really wanted to pitfall Rich Energy, but I couldn't find anything. Just thought it would be fun to do. But yeah, I mean, Williams, not having spare parts at the test was bad enough, but not making spare parts for the season is also equally as embarrassing. So, anybody have any opinion, or we can move on to somebody else?
Well, I feel like Jess is going to make like a whittling
I was
joke
getting
here.
ready to say, I just feel like
yeah.
there's still someone whittling parts in the background.
Can they fire their head whittler? Is that the problem with their team at this point?
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, in their defense, like, now, I don't know what's being managed over there or not, but the car is, there's no point in putting any more money in the car. So hopefully what they've just been doing is putting all their money into next year's car, because, like, I mean, what was Kubica going to do anyway? I mean, he's going to get 19th or 20th. So it's, hell, just run them without the wings at this point. Just who cares if he crashes?
Yes, so I don't know. Maybe they should just fire their head whittler.
I don't.
He's obviously not keeping up with productivity demands.
But the thing is
not.
whittling takes a while, so maybe they just need to hire another whittler.
The poor guy is probably just sitting at home watching practice, and Kubica like nicks the wall, and he's like, dang it, back to the shop for 14 hours.
Have you guys watched like the Netflix series of the like the reviewing of F1 season?
Yeah.
Like the next, like all these teams, they showing like they have like 400 or 500 employees, and I'm looking at like Andretti is a huge team, and there was maybe 100, 150 people altogether. I'm thinking, what the hell does Williams need 600 employees for? Like,
Whittler one,
I'm just
Whittler
looking at,
two, Whittler
well,
three.
yes, if they're all whittling, yeah. I mean, if they're all whittling stuff, yeah, it does take time. But man, that's an awful lot of wasted, almost like in my head, wasted expenses for. I mean, you don't need 3 people to put on stickers. And let's see. Do you guys have Amazon Prime? Yeah. I just got Amazon Prime, so I watched that Grand Prix driver. The series that showed the McLaren, the disaster McLaren season. Yeah. And they're doing like they're doing the first engine test at the shop, and they're still finishing building the stuff. They've got like 8 middle managers all standing around like, watching, the 4 or 5 mechanics working on the stuff. And I'm like, I think I see a wasted money pit going on right here. Like they're all like, well, it's going to be a late night tonight. I'm like thinking, you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there watching the real people working. Like what? I don't know. F1 just looks like such a weird sport to me with all
Yeah, my dad says the same thing about their pit stops. He says that it seems like every crewman out there has someone else there to scratch their back. And then there's a guy to scratch that guy's back.
But I mean, that's how you get a pit stop done in 2 seconds, I guess. You have 50 guys around the car.
Well,
they have 2 guys that just stand on the either side of the car to like hold it steady while everything goes. I mean, it's like it used to be like a cool thing. To, yeah, I work on a pit stop for F1. It's like, oh well, what do? I touch the car on the top of the roll bar when it's in the pit, so it doesn't tip over when the real guys are like. What are you supposed to say now? It's just weird.
I concur.
But and the Haas guys still can't get it right. So
we could talk about them and Rich Energy for days, but I will turn it over to whoever else wants to pitfall next.
Well, mine's F1 related too, so why don't we just go for it? Renault got busted for their Japanese Grand Prix results because their cars were deemed illegal because they had basically something in their car to automatically adjust the brake bias, which is definitely highly frowned upon. And the reason I'm pitfalling them is I'm not quite sure how they thought they would get away with that. That's not really something like easy to hide. I mean, if you look at their onboard, unless they're acting like the drivers are acting the entire race by sticking their hand out and looking like they're adjusting their brake bias. I mean, if the telemetry shows that brake bias is being adjusted and you look at the driver and both of his hands are on the steering wheel, that's kind of a dead giveaway that there's probably something fishy happening. So that kind of seems like something maybe that happened in Formula One of yesteryear. That kind of seems like a trick Ferrari would have done like 20 years ago. But to try to do that this day and age, especially with social media that can point things out really easily and things like that, kind of a stupid idea if you ask me.
And also, if you're going to cheat to like win, not cheat to get 12th. I mean,
I can't argue that.
But actually, when I first read about that, I was like, well, it's actually kind of a cool technology that they have. That sounds pretty awesome. I'm thinking, how soon is it before like they just record, like they just get a Delta lap where they record, the throttle positions and stuff, and just basically the driver just sits there and steers as the car will just brake by itself and put on the throttle by itself. But it's kind of interesting. But yeah, how are you supposed to like hide that? They didn't seem like they did a good job of that.
They definitely did not.
And also, yeah, if you cheat, you better get a top 5 instead of like a 12th or 11th. That doesn't seem useful.
I agree. I think it's Jess's turn.
It is, and mine is not F1 related, so I'm going to give you one guess as to what it is related to.
Cheese.
Not cheese. You failed miserably.
Is it Gordon Ramsay?
Negative, but I did see a picture of his kid today, and it was kind of funny. Anyways.
That's so random.
Well, his kid looks like he was getting ready to scream at somebody for not cooking something right. So it was funny. Anywho, mine is related to NASCAR, but the Xfinity Series this time. So last weekend, 2 drivers, Cole Custer and Tyler Reddick, decided that they were going to have a little fight after the race. The reason I kind of hesitated to say fight is because I have to put fight in quotation marks here, because when they approached each other and started screaming, which is, normal, they went for the hats. They knocked each other's hats off, guys. And then they pretty much got pulled apart directly after, and they kept both trying to go back, but it was not exactly what I would call like a knockdown drag out, but everybody acted as if it was. I watched like a solid minute and a half of video. I never saw any actual physical contact other than the hats getting knocked off, but I know that it was quite talked about, and I just got tickled by it, honestly. I hope that they don't get in trouble. I haven't followed it enough to know if they did get in trouble or not, but
they did not. So
isn't that kind of what NASCAR's like, about, like,
It was 2 guys that knew that they didn't really want to fight, but they're like, hey, let's look like we'll fight. We both know our crew guys are going to pull us apart as soon as we like lock on.
Well, when the first one, and I don't know them apart, and I'm sorry, I just don't follow that series enough to know which is which, but the first one walked up and just like knocked his hat off, but he was clearly close enough to throw a real punch. So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm not really feeling that you really want to do this.
Yeah, there was one crew guy who grabbed his opponent's pretty much pulled him away by the throat. And that was the only quote unquote action of the entire sequence. But yeah, NASCAR did come out with its weekly penalty chart or whatever announcement today. And then none of them were penalized for anything. So Jess, you guys pushed.
Good.
Well, it's such a, I don't know. Didn't Natalie Decker do something like that earlier in the year?
It was.
Oh, there's a great video of Natalie Decker ripping someone's hat off. There's a
What's with
great
the
video of
hats?
that.
What did the hats do to
It
everybody?
was the same kind of deal, though. I mean, he just walked up and flipped it right off of his head. And I'm like, really?
I think the moral of the story is NASCAR doesn't like hats.
Apparently.
Apparently, yeah. That's what I get.
It's a good way to end the episode, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way. Josh, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your perspective on everything, and hopefully we'll see you, at the track in St. Pete in one way, shape, or the other. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm just going to quickly plug my podcast again. It's the North 40 Report. You can download it on iTunes. And gosh, I forget the website. That's how long it's been. I forget the website that I actually posted.
I'll put it in our iTunes show notes for people to find.
Yeah, as you can tell, mine's as professional as your guys' is.
Hey, you said we were professional. That is definitely getting a sound bite out of it and going on YouTube.
Yeah, I guess you guys are professional. There you go. But yes, I appreciate you guys having me, and hopefully I'll be seeing you guys out there too.
We
absolutely
enjoy the off season, and you'll be doing a couple things. So, with that, Jess, why don't you go ahead and sign us off?
And guys, keep your lug nuts tight.